In December 2012 in Omagh, Northern Ireland, alarm bells began ringing for the family of 34-year-old Charlotte Murray.
Charlotte lived quite a distance from her family, but she never missed a birthday or Christmas.
Charlotte's fiancé, Johnny Miller, told her worried family she'd simply walked out 2 months earlier.
Charlotte's just taken off. She's vanished. She leaves her dog, beloved dog Bella, leaves her car.
Months turned to years, and Charlotte Murray did not return. Nor were there any signs of life.
She hadn't registered a mobile phone, she hadn't used a bank account.
As detectives continued to dig, they realized Charlotte's boyfriend was not the jilted fiancé he was pretending to be.
What seemed like quite deliberate attempts to cover up and to suggest that she was still alive.
But he was determined to get away with it, and he was very calm afterwards. This is a dangerous person.
Though Charlotte Murray's body was never found, in 2019 her fiancé Johnny Miller was finally proven to be one of the world's most evil killers. Johnny Miller's conviction for murdering Charlotte Murray was without precedent in Irish legal history. It was Northern Ireland's first ever no-body murder conviction.
It changed the landscape of possibilities. You know, people just weren't going to get walking away just because it didn't just tick every box. Dig deeper and deeper, and you keep digging until you get the facts.
Charlotte's family is now working with Northern Ireland's Justice Minister on new legislation that will put pressure on killers to reveal where their victims' remains can be found.
Losing a loved one in any circumstance is very difficult. But for these families, they have no certainty as to what happened or how it happened or why it happened. They've never had that closure. I would hope that the law and the processes that we're putting in place would help the families in being able to find the truth about their final hours and be able to locate the remains so that they can have a burial.
Charlotte might never be found, but at least that law will be introduced and people will be dissuaded from doing this because they know they will never get out if they do it.
It's the last bit of power he has over the family. I'm not telling you, and you can't make me. I'm still saying I'm innocent, even though I've been proven guilty.
DS James Brannigan, who was part of the team that brought Miller to justice, lives in hope that the killer might one day do the right thing.
He's been convicted. He's had his appeal heard. His appeal has been rejected. You know, if he has any moral fibre in him, just put the family out of misery and let them know where Charlotte is.
Only time will tell if Johnny Miller will end his silence and give Charlotte's family the closure they deserve. This killer's story begins on the 16th of January 1971. John Patrick Miller was born in County Londonderry, Northern Ireland.
He's originally from Coleraine. His parents were very upstanding members of the community. He came from a very educated, privileged background. He was very, very fond of his parents and his sister.
He seemed to have a stable upbringing at the time with that family. We don't know what went on in his life outside of the family setup.
He was, by all accounts, a perfectly reasonable schoolboy, but he was also a very fine canoeist, and in fact became an All-Ireland canoe champion. This is a considerable achievement.
He then went on to become a chef and was working in various establishments over the years and never continued with the canoeing, even though he had a talent at it.
One friend who worked with him said he was hard-working and likeable, never aggressive, never angry.
He worked for a time in the very plush resort of Lusty Beg in Fermanagh, which is a really top of the range. And that's where they actually met. Charlotte was working there too.
Johnny Miller and Charlotte Murray met in late 2010, and the 39-year-old chef very quickly became the centre of Charlotte's world.
I think what happened was literally a sort of spark of infatuation. It was really strong and powerful.
Charlotte Murray hailed from County Tyrone, 25 miles from Lusty Beg.
She was the older of the two identical twins. Her sister was called Denise. They were the 6th and 7th children in an 11-children family.
Born just 2 minutes apart in December 1978, the twins were inseparable growing up. They felt one another's pain and even got identical scars when they hurt themselves while playing.
The two of them were wild kids at the time.
They sound the same, look the same. It was bizarre, but they were close. They were really, really close.
Charlotte's twin described her as the louder, more confident one, always first on the dance floor.
Perfectly happy girl. She could be the life and soul of the party when she chose to be.
But potential fractures between Charlotte and her family always lay just below the surface.
She was a much-loved child. At times she felt there was more affection given elsewhere in the family, but she was a very much-loved child, but drifted. She definitely did drift.
I know she would have fallen out with siblings from time to time, and it would have been quite fractious relationship at times. And you look at when she was growing up, was in the midst of what was going on here during the Troubles. So it was quite a chaotic life, and children could get lost in that atmosphere at that time, and she did.
In her 20s, Charlotte experienced some trouble with her mental health.
She was getting treatment, she was being looked after by medical professionals, but it looked like she was getting onto a more stable footing.
She was a hard worker, very hard worker, never out of a job for long. Worked in the hospitality industry, either as waitressing or front of house or those sort of things.
This was the young woman who, in late 2010, fell for chef Johnny Miller on the resort island of Lusty Beg. In early 2011, 32-year-old Charlotte moved with Miller to a small village in County Tyrone.
They then moved to Moy, where Johnny and Charlotte got a job in the Cohannon Inn. So they were both working together, living together, and living up in Roxborough Heights in Moy.
Moy is a small village. It has a town square. It's really a pretty village, and the people are very close to each other, and everybody would be friends with everybody.
In their new home, Charlotte set about making a life for herself with Miller.
It seems to have been a good relationship to begin with. She described him as protective of her. She was clearly very, very entranced by Mr. Miller, but she would have been very, I use this term respectfully, needy. She liked affection, and I think we all do. But she liked to have someone there caring about her, worrying about her, looking after her. She liked that, and she needed it, and that seemed to give her some stability.
There was perhaps a darker side to the bond Charlotte and her new boyfriend seemed to have quickly developed.
The two of them moved quite quickly together, moved in together, worked together. It was very, very quick. She would have known nobody except him. All this happened within 3 months, and that's always a concerning sign, because it can suggest that there's a bit of control in that relationship.
On the surface, though, Charlotte seems settled. She got a little dog, Bella, her pride and joy, and the couple made new friends in the area.
She was a regular in the local bar. She had a group of friends.
On the 29th of February 2012, leap year day, Charlotte actually proposed to Miller.
She said about getting married and he agreed. She chose the ring and he paid for it.
Charlotte seemed happy to be engaged, but her family was not invited to share in her joy. Despite living just 35 miles from Moy, they never got to meet her fiancé.
There was some Facebook contacts and maybe the occasional phone call, but as far as the family knew, she was simply with a new bloke. She never took Miller to see them.
When Charlotte Murray's family finally came face to face with Johnny Miller 13 months later, they would not be celebrating the couple's engagement. Instead, they'd be desperately searching for a missing person. In the spring of 2012, while living with her boyfriend Johnny Miller in the village of Moy in County Tyrone, 33-year-old Charlotte Murray became increasingly isolated from her mother and siblings.
I think there was some determination on the part of Johnny Miller to isolate and control Charlotte.
There was one peculiar instant where Charlotte rang her mother when she was living with Johnny, and the mother recounts this conversation where the male voice in the background was saying, you know, they don't love you anymore. Now, how was she being controlled in that environment? We don't know.
Significantly, very shortly after Charlotte proposed to Miller, the twins fell out.
Working together, living together, socialising together, they were always together. The same group of friends, same group of everything. Charlotte probably couldn't have confided in anybody if there was an issue.
Another concerning thing that we find out about Johnny Miller is that he was porn addicted and that he used to regularly seek the services of sex workers. Those things are really big red flags. You put those two things together and you probably have a man who's quite misogynistic.
In the autumn of 2012, there was another troubling incident in Miller and Charlotte's relationship.
In the middle of October 2012, she and Miller make a sex tape. Obviously extremely explicit, which Miller then urges her to send to her ex-boyfriend in Belfast.
The idea was to say, you know, well, she's mine now type thing.
Given what we know about his behaviour, I would be very suspicious that Charlotte entered into that quite willingly. I think she probably didn't. He's also treating her almost as if she's a commodity, as if she's throwaway. If you really cared for and loved someone, you wouldn't put them in a position where they were doing anything that they felt very uncomfortable with.
There did seem to be a jealous streak there at times, even though he played this very blasé. I don't know that he was in a protective way. I think it was more his male ego, that she would dare see somebody else.
It was around this time that Charlotte went to a professional to seek help for her mental health and to express misgivings about her relationship with Johnny Miller.
Charlotte goes to see a doctor and says, I'm very depressed and I'm thinking of harming myself. It was a sort of appeal for help. She feels overwhelmed and she just needed space. But she tells the psychiatrist that she's not suicidal, she likes life and she wants to be part of it.
She told the doctor that she wanted to leave Miller, but was afraid of being alone.
You can entirely understand those feelings. Like the moth and the flame, she can't quite tear herself away.
A few days later, on the 20th of October, came an incident that exposed just how much the couple's relationship had soured.
Charlotte, Miller and their friend Kieran go out to the pub for a drink.
They were celebrating a birthday in Bishop's Bar. They all left together, but they just went different ways. Charlotte and Kieran ended up outside his house, and at that point, they went into the house.
Johnny Miller was disturbed when Charlotte didn't come home that night.
And then he's ringing Charlotte, ringing, no answer. We know he was down knocking on the house.
After searching the streets until 4 in the morning, Miller went home. Suspecting infidelity, Miller told friends this was the last straw for him and Charlotte.
I suspect that he then really did lose his temper with her, and that relationship, which had already been tense, was even tenser.
It was a precarious moment for a woman with a jealous and controlling fiancé.
That was potentially an incredibly dangerous situation for Charlotte to be in.
10 days later, Miller began telling his and Charlotte's friends in Moy that the engagement was off.
Johnny was just telling them, oh, she's gone to Belfast, we broke up, she's away.
Charlotte seemed to have been planning to leave Miller. She had been for a job interview in Belfast.
But had Charlotte really left for a new life in the capital?
That would, raise the hackles on my neck. If you're in a relationship with a controlling person, the most common trigger that predicts homicide is that you are attempting to leave them or you have left them.
11 weeks later, in December 2012, in Omagh, County Tyrone, Denise Murray expected to celebrate her birthday with twin sister Charlotte, just as they always did. The two were turning 34.
Charlotte was not always in touch with them, but she never let a Christmas go by or a birthday go by that she didn't get in touch.
That year, Christmas and the twins' birthday came and went without a word from Charlotte.
There's not a sign of her. Nothing. She's disappeared.
Such a large family. They all thought somebody else had been talking to Charlotte until it came to Christmas, and then said, well, nobody's heard from her. And then that's what prompted them to start looking further into this themselves. And it was a blessing that she had that family behind her to ask those questions at the time. They then started contacting Johnny after that to see, had he seen Charlotte? When's the last time he saw her?
Well, Charlotte left. Charlotte's just taken off. I don't know where she's gone. I'm not sure.
Miller told Charlotte's family that she'd left him around Halloween 2012.
He kept assuring it was all right. We've split up. What do you want me to tell you? She's not my problem anymore. Miller would say that, she texted me the other day there. She's met some new guy. And she was very, very flippant about it.
I think at one point he suggests to them that she might have gone to Belfast to work in a call centre.
January, February that year, he arranged to meet them and brought them a box of her belongings, which was really very little of her actual belongings, and said that's all she'd left.
Miller told Charlotte's family she'd left behind her car, which by this time was long gone.
He said that she told him to sell the car because she owed him rent money.
She left her laptop. Anything of value she seems to have left behind.
What really struck Charlotte's mother and siblings as strange was the fact she'd left her beloved dog behind in Moy.
She never went anywhere without Bella, her dog, and she was her pride and joy.
This wasn't normal behaviour. Not normal for Charlotte. If it was Charlotte's car, she would have taken it. If it was Charlotte's dog, she would have taken it. Miller seemed very evasive, not answering direct questions, and just seemed very fidgety and edgy, and didn't want to be there, and it raised concerns.
With horror, Charlotte's family realised they couldn't find anyone who'd spoken to her in over 5 months. On the 13th of March 2013, they reported her missing. Would the police manage to discover Charlotte's whereabouts? And would she be found safe and sound? In May 2013, Police Service Northern Ireland launched a missing persons inquiry to locate 34-year-old Charlotte Murray, who hadn't been seen by her fiancé Johnny Miller since the previous October.
Missing persons investigations are always complicated things because the police quite rightly say, well, perhaps she just wanted to disappear. Perhaps she had enough.
Often you don't really even know when someone was last seen, particularly if people are lying or particularly if a lot of time has gone by. The public often trying to be helpful ring in tips and sightings and things, which are very often wrong and lead the police into the wrong direction, down the wrong path. Are they still alive? Did they go away of their own accord?
When the police knocked on 42-year-old Johnny Miller's door, this is exactly what he claimed had happened.
Johnny, in his first statement to police as a witness in March, said that, no, she'd just gone up to Belfast. And then his story was that while in work, he got a text to say she was calling around the house to pick up more stuff. And when he got home, her stuff was gone.
It appeared that Charlotte had also told other people in her life that she needed a change of scenery.
On the 1st of November, 5:15 a.m., Charlotte apparently posts on Facebook, "I've had enough, I'm going away for a while." I think she says, "I'm pissed off with life." She also texts one or two friends saying, "I'm going away for a while." And Miller claims that he's received texts from Charlotte saying that she's going away.
Detectives needed to find out if Charlotte really had just left Moy of her own accord.
She hadn't registered a mobile phone, she hadn't used her bank account. Her lifestyle told us that she could not operate for any period of time without coming in contact with the state.
She's not seeing any medical professionals, she's not going to the dentist.
The police also needed to rule out the possibility Charlotte had taken her own life.
If anyone's ever had an episode in their life where they've been unhappy, it seems often the leap is made that perhaps this is a suicide case.
At the time, we looked at it, and if she had been severely depressed or suicidal at the time, you were really focused on the fact she'd taken her own life. But there was nothing there to tell us that this was what had actually happened to her.
Charlotte's body wasn't found, and it is quite difficult, depending on how you plan to take your own life, to make sure your body's completely hidden. Even if you jump off a boat into the sea and your body is completely hidden for a while, it usually, it will get found at some point. It's a very, very difficult thing to do, to take your own life and for your body never to be found.
No body had been found, but nor was there any sign that Charlotte Murray was alive and living her life elsewhere.
Once the proof of life inquiries had proved or shown no existence of this lady, it then becomes a murder inquiry.
And when the major investigations team took on the case, the first person they looked at was the last person to have seen Charlotte alive.
Johnny Miller was declared a suspect June 2013. At that point, you're able to then get warrants for the house. There was searches done of the garden and forensic analysis done of the house, and it was declared a scene.
They find some blood spatters in the bathroom of the house they shared.
The forensics took the house apart and found blood in the bathroom. They actually unscrewed the waste pipe from the toilet, took it off, and there were little traces of blood in there, and that was Charlotte's blood.
They found a number of areas of blood which were down the panels of the bath. There was crevices down the panel of the bath. There was some in there, Charlotte's blood. There was blood underneath the waste pipe where it would have dripped down underneath the waste pipe.
It was a find that suggested large quantities of blood had been spilled in that bathroom.
Miller was questioned for a number of hours.
And he repeats this rather strange story about she might have gone to work in Belfast.
I find it really surprising that it happens quite often, that it seems to be accepted that a woman who disappears has just gone off to start a new life somewhere. And I wonder how often that actually ever really happens. So it's bizarre to me that that's so easily accepted. And I think it's often because judgments are made about a woman's lifestyle or past.
He was also able to explain away the blood in the bathroom, citing an accident that had happened shortly before Charlotte disappeared.
Charlotte had a cut. She had seen the minor injuries unit. Now, the cut was on the upper right buttock when she claimed she had sat on a light bulb. And I don't know if that was ever proved to be anything other than what she said, but she required stitches, so it was quite a deep cut.
Despite their suspicions, the police did not have enough in July 2013 to charge Johnny Miller with his fiancée's murder.
There was no smoking gun at that point. There was no motive at that point. So they had very little to put them.
With no body and no definitive proof a crime had been committed, police resources were diverted to other cases. In 2016, when Charlotte had been missing for over 3 years, DS James Brannigan joined the Major Investigations team.
It was the first piece of work I was given back as a sergeant.
I think missing persons cases are so difficult, and just to acknowledge it is really difficult for the police as well, because there's no evidence at all, there's no body, often there's no crime scene.
But it was at that point I started to do more work into it. My attitude was, people just don't vanish and disappear. Something has happened.
A visit to Omar made DS Brannigan even more determined to get to the bottom of Charlotte's disappearance.
Even years later, you can see how much it was still impacting them. These are the people you're doing this for, not just Charlotte. They need the answers.
First of all, detectives needed to make sure Charlotte hadn't turned up living somewhere else in the last 3 years.
The police carried out extensive proof of life inquiries, credit card transactions, sightings, everything. And there were supposedly a number of sightings, one in Birmingham, one in Germany, all these different areas.
There was some talk that she may have been alive and living in Dublin. That all had to be investigated to the nth degree, plus all these other Charlotte Murrays that appear around the UK and Ireland, they have to be spoken to. Who's that Charlotte? Is this our Charlotte? There's thousands of inquiries, thousands of requests off to councils, hospitals, police forces, banks, telecoms.
Once satisfied that Charlotte was no longer alive, the next thing police needed to identify was a motive. If Johnny Miller had killed his fiancée, why had he done it? As detectives kept digging into Charlotte's final days, they made a disturbing discovery.
There was intelligence to say that there was a certain individual had naked images of Charlotte. 2 officers, all credit to them, went out to speak to this person, and he still had the phone going back 5 years. So suddenly we had this phone with naked images of Charlotte, which were taken on the 20th of October.
The 20th of October 2012 was just 11 days before Charlotte was believed to have vanished. Had Johnny Miller been aware of the photos of his fiancée taken with another man?
Well, now the police have something which they never had before. Motive. What if Miller was so infuriated by those photographs that he decided to kill her?
When detectives dived into Johnny Miller's computer, they discovered that on the night of the 31st of October to the 1st of November, he'd been very, very busy.
Miller was online looking to sell the engagement ring.
When questioned, Miller tried to claim he'd been sent the explicit images of Charlotte and, as a result, had decided to end their engagement.
He was going to say, I saw the images, I was trying to sell the engagement ring.
But there was an obvious flaw in his story.
You did not get the images till 6 o'clock. So why are you trying to sell the engagement ring at 3 o'clock in the morning?
The police found that Miller had been accessing dating sites just a couple of hours after Charlotte went missing. It sounds like a really strange thing to do. He wasn't worrying about where she was because he knew exactly where she was.
They also found that Charlotte's Facebook post on the morning after her disappearance, which said that she was taking off, I'm pissed off with life, I want a new one, had been sent from an IP address identical to the one that Miller had been using searching dating sites that same day.
Cell site analysis also cast doubt on the goodbye messages Charlotte had apparently sent in the days after Halloween.
You can see when Charlotte went to Belfast on the 30th of October, she went up for a job interview. You can see her car and her phone going up to Belfast. You can see her car and phone coming back down, connecting to the cells as she came back down to Moy. When she disappeared, her phone didn't leave Moy. So we believe it was Johnny making these texts, closing her life down, and texting her friend Michelle to say, I'm taking time out and I'll give you a shout at some point in the future. So Michelle then would stop looking for her.
Circumstantial evidence was stacking up against Johnny Miller, but there was still no smoking gun. Would it be enough to persuade a jury he was a callous killer? On the 24th of October 2017, almost 5 years after Charlotte Murray was last seen alive, her fiancé, 46-year-old Johnny Miller, was charged with her murder. The news was a bombshell for the small community of Moy, County Tyrone, where Miller and 34-year-old Charlotte had lived.
Shock was the big thing because nobody expected it to be murder. Missing, runaway, probably thought all sorts of things, but nobody expected it to be murder. And I don't think anybody expected it to be Johnny, the Johnny in the village, because he was very likeable. Everybody knew him and he carried on living there, mixed with the same people, and probably felt quite sorry for him because, you know, it's just cleared off and left me with half the rent and left me with our dog.
I do find that people are often very quick to believe what a man says about a woman and to make assumptions about a woman based on past behaviour or history, lifestyle, anything like that. I suppose that's partly because it is quite a huge cognitive leap that a man that you know and you care about could have a violent side.
The trial begins at Dungannon Crown Court on the 11th of September 2019, and Miller pleads not guilty.
Journalist Tanya Foles attended every day of the trial, as did Charlotte's grieving family, including her identical twin, Denise.
Every time we were talking about Charlotte and you looked to your left, you just swore she was sitting in the gallery. She was so like her. The atmosphere, it was frightening at times. You have the dock and you have the gallery where the families are, and they're keeping them very much apart. One side fighting for his innocence, one side fighting for a verdict of guilty.
The prosecution argue, of course, that the photographs, the naked photographs, are the motive that Miller has used. And there was a marvellous phrase used by the prosecution at one point, said, "They were the last straw. You were being shown as a cuckold."
Our main evidence was his statement and the cell site information we had. The fact that we could prove she's no longer alive and she has not left the Moy. She did not leave the Moy. He's saying she left in a van. He's saying she left to go to Belfast. We can prove she never left, and her phone never left Moy. What he was doing on the 31st on his computer, we can see image by image of a screenshot of his machine of what he's doing. He's up all night working on his computer. He's trying to sell an engagement ring.
Fascinatingly, when she disappeared, 2012, Miller had bought an axe and a saw as what he said was a Christmas present for his father.
He bought items, carpet cleaner and some tools.
Over 4 days on the stand, Chef Johnny Miller tried to explain away all of the other inconsistencies in his stories.
He was completely passive in the dock. He never showed any stress. He was completely relaxed in the witness box. He was so arm up on the back of the chair, very casual, you know. I'm here to help. Very, very charming, I'm so likeable.
Johnny Miller, we know, was an incredibly misogynistic and controlling, predatory man. But he was also quite charming when he wanted to be, and he could be friendly, and he could draw people to him.
On the 7th of October 2019, the jury retired to consider its verdict.
I'll never forget it because you're sitting waiting. You can't do anything, but you hardly sleep that night. You're going over everything.
45 minutes into the deliberation the next day, his lawyer came running out and said, "Johnny, come on, verdict." Johnny's out having a smoke, flicks a cigarette. Very calm, very, very calm. But there was something about his lawyer's face that made me think, hey, this is too quick.
And you're looking across the family. They're all in tears at this point.
In the dock, Miller stood ready to hear his fate.
How do you find the defendant on the charge of murder? And they went guilty. And he just and drops into the seat. His mother is in hysterics, and 2 of Charlotte's family just little soft clap. It was highly charged.
The relief is unreal. Years of work. You see the family there in tears, colleagues in tears, and you see you've put all this work in to this for that family, and it's just such a relief.
Miller was given life with a minimum of 16 years. Miller was then only 48, which theoretically means he's eligible for parole in his mid-60s. In the wake of his conviction, Charlotte's twin sister Denise and the family demand that he tell them what he did with Charlotte's body. He steadfastly refused to do so.
They are a family grieving. They're trying to get closure. They are struggling terribly, and it's not going to be right until Charlotte's found. And Charlotte's sister made a really emotional appeal. Do the right thing, do the honourable thing, tell us where she is. And that's the way they're living at the minute.
Johnny Miller had, however, given detectives a clue they hoped might lead to Charlotte's remains.
We're about 6 miles outside Moy in an old quarry, flooded quarry in Benburb, which is just next to Benburb Priory. He had said in his evidence that he was down here at 6:30 the morning after she disappeared. It's extremely isolated. We first searched the ground area. It was, I believe, 2018. We were searching the bank of the quarry, and we had divers in the quarry. It's quite murky down there, so they couldn't see much. So we then had sonar, a boat in with sonar, so they mapped the whole bottom of the quarry. But the dog gave the biggest indication up on the bank of human remains.
With strong signs that a body may have been disposed of at the quarry, the decision was made to drain it.
And it was a long, long wait watching it go down because we couldn't start searching till it was all drained. There were bones found, a lot of bones, but all animal bones where people had discarded animals in here. It was tense because the family were here a lot of the time as well, and we really were hopeful that her remains could be located here to give the family some closure from that side of it. They had the conviction, but they still have not, they don't have Charlotte.
After days of determined searching, there was no resolution for Charlotte's loving family. Years later, the search for Charlotte continues, and those at the very top of Northern Ireland's government have dedicated themselves to the campaign for justice.
Charlotte's body has never been found. To lose a loved one in such violent circumstances is in itself incredibly distressing. But to have that pain and anguish compounded by the fact that you can never have a memorial for that person, to not have the ability to be able to bury their loved one, to not have the ability to take flowers on a birthday or to visit the gravesite at Christmas, it's incredibly distressing for families.
In the aftermath of Johnny Miller's conviction, Charlotte's family is campaigning for new legislation that would force killers like him to reveal where they've concealed their victim's body.
The families came to me here with a proposal for Charlotte's Law. So we worked with the families very closely and looked at how, at each stage of the process, we would be able to incentivise for the perpetrator to actually tell where the body was and give the families that comfort. And there's a sort of sliding scale that we're putting in place, that the earlier that information is released to the families, the more significant the consideration will be for the person in sentencing.
You have to understand this family's pain. And if the only way to do that is to say to him, your sentence might be somewhat reduced, the family are willing to accept that.
By denying his guilt and refusing to reveal where Charlotte's body can be found, Johnny Miller has denied his victim's family the opportunity to let their beloved daughter and sister rest in peace. By ending his fiancée's young life, then laying a trail of deception, Miller has proven himself to be one of the world's most evil killers.